Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're chasing someone who keeps pulling away? Like the more you give, the more they retreat? You're not crazy. You're not clinging. You're stuck in a psychological tug-of-war with someone who's avoidant. And guess what? You're playing right into it. But here's the truth. You don't need to beg for love. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. What you do need is to flip the script. Today, we're going to break down exactly how to shift the power dynamic. Not with manipulation, but with psychology. I'll show you 3 simple science-backed triggers that make an avoidant sit up, lean in, and think, wait, why am I thinking about them so much? Because when you understand how the human mind actually works in relationships, you stop chasing and start attracting. Let's get into it. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style is closing the distance too fast. When we sense someone pulling away, our instinct, especially if we're anxious or deeply emotionally invested, is to chase, to explain, to fix. We send the extra text, we ask what's wrong, we lean in harder. But what we don't realize is that this behavior, while well-intentioned, triggers the very thing that makes an avoidant shut down further, a perceived loss of autonomy. Avoidant individuals are often hypersensitive to emotional closeness, not because they don't want love, but because closeness feels like a threat to their independence. The closer you get, the more their nervous system sounds the alarm. It's not about you, it's about how their brain has been wired over time, usually by early experiences of emotional inconsistency, neglect, or pressure. Love, to them, can feel overwhelming, even suffocating, when it comes too fast or too intense. That's where the concept of strategic distance becomes incredibly powerful. Distance, in this context, isn't about being cold, cruel, or manipulative. It's about honoring their need for space in a way that also reinforces your own self-worth. It's choosing to respond rather than react. When someone pulls back, strategic distance means you don't chase, you pause. You let the space exist without filling it. You resist the urge to over-communicate or demand closeness, and in doing so, you disrupt the cycle that keeps pushing them away. This psychological space allows the avoidant to do something they rarely get the chance to do in romantic dynamics: miss you. You're giving them a window to notice your absence, to reflect on your presence, and to engage with their own emotions instead of just reacting defensively. And this shift can be magnetic. There's a basic truth about human nature that applies here. We value what isn't always immediately accessible. When something or someone is slightly out of reach, we start to think about them more. We wonder, we fantasize, we assign greater value. This is called the scarcity effect. And it's not manipulation, it's a psychological principle that runs deep in human behavior. When you're always available, always responsive, always giving, you're easy to take for granted. But when you create space intentionally, you become more compelling. You give the other person room to pursue rather than always being the one doing the emotional labor. Strategic distance also allows you to recalibrate. It helps you step back from the anxious loop of trying to decode every message or fix every emotional gap. It creates space for you to reconnect with your own needs and boundaries. And when you show someone, especially an avoidant, that you are capable of giving space without falling apart, you're communicating something incredibly attractive: emotional security. You're showing that you can self-regulate, that you're not controlled by fear or reactivity. And that makes you a safe person to be around, even for someone who fears intimacy. Of course, this isn't about playing games. If you withdraw with resentment or use silence as a punishment, that's not strategic distance, that's emotional warfare. The key is neutral detachment. Creating space with calm, dignity, and self-respect. You're not waiting for them to validate you. You're not trying to provoke a response. You're stepping back because you recognize that this dynamic only works if both people feel safe. And the only way to restore safety for someone with an avoidant system is to reduce perceived pressure. That requires space, Now, the hard part, especially if you have an anxious attachment style yourself, is sitting in the discomfort of that distance. It's not easy. Silence can feel like rejection. You may be tempted to fill the void with more contact, more giving, more reassurance seeking. But this is where your own growth happens. Learning to tolerate uncertainty, to stay grounded in your own emotional center, and to let the other person come toward you when they're ready. This is the shift that changes everything. You're not abandoning them. You're not playing hard to get. You're simply choosing not to chase someone who needs room to breathe. And when you do this from a place of inner strength, rather than emotional scarcity, the dynamic begins to shift. They sense it. They feel your calm energy. They notice that you're not panicking or overreaching. And over time, that consistency, that self-trust, becomes a grounding presence in their life, one that doesn't demand, doesn't smother, but quietly invites connection. In practice, strategic distance might look like not replying to a message right away. Not to punish, but because you're not emotionally overinvested. It might mean going a few days without reaching out after they've pulled back, trusting that if the connection is real, it will realign. It might mean filling your time with people and activities that bring you joy and fulfillment, so you're not emotionally dependent on their attention to feel okay. Ultimately, what strategic distance does is put the power back in your hands, not over them, but over yourself. You stop being driven by their avoidance. You stop trying to fix something that was never yours to fix. And in that space, you give both of you a chance to experience something rare in emotionally reactive relationships: peace. You're not the fixer. You're not the chaser. You're the calm in the storm. And in a world where most people either cling or cut off, that makes you unforgettable. There's a strange paradox at the heart of human connection. We crave validation, but we're wired to notice it more when it's not guaranteed. Predictability may feel safe, but unpredictability commands attention. And when it comes to creating emotional impact, especially with someone who leans avoidant, this paradox becomes a powerful tool. Avoidant individuals tend to be uncomfortable with overt, constant displays of affection, not because they don't want to feel appreciated, but because consistent validation often triggers a sense of emotional claustrophobia. They may interpret that steady stream of affirmation as pressure or obligation, even if you're just trying to express love. Over time, what started as sweet and sincere can feel intrusive or even manipulative to them. The more you reassure, the more they may silently retreat. That's where unpredictability becomes not just effective, it becomes essential. Unpredictable validation means shifting the pattern. Instead of offering constant reassurance, you offer it in moments that feel genuine, spontaneous, and earned. You break the rhythm just enough that your words land with more weight. And the result? You become memorable. Not because you're always there, but because when you do show up emotionally, it feels real. Let's be clear, this isn't about playing hot and cold to keep someone addicted. That's manipulation, and it leads to toxic dynamics. What we're talking about is the art of timing. It's about understanding that human psychology is wired to respond more intensely to reward that comes unexpectedly. This is known as intermittent reinforcement, a well-studied principle in behavioral psychology. It's the same mechanism that keeps people pulling slot machines. They never know when the next win is coming, so they stay engaged. And while you're not trying to be a slot machine, the principle applies. People pay closer attention when validation is unpredictable. When your affection is always available, it can blend into the background. It becomes something the avoidant learns to expect and sometimes take for granted. But when it appears more sporadically, when it's offered without prompting or withheld when they're pushing boundaries, it becomes earned. It carries weight. They remember it. They reflect on it. They internalize it in a deeper way. This unpredictability also creates contrast. When you're not always affirming, the moments when you do offer validation stand out emotionally. If you always say, "You're amazing," the words lose their edge. But if you say nothing for a while and then casually in the middle of a conversation drop a sincere, "I really respect how you handled that," it hits differently. It feels real. It lands because it wasn't expected. And in that moment, you're not just offering praise, you're building emotional value. But unpredictable validation isn't just about timing, it's also about tone. You're not fawning or flattering to get a response. You're not giving validation out of insecurity or fear of abandonment. You're doing it from a grounded place. You're intentional. You observe, you notice, and when you choose to say something affirming, you say it like you mean it. That confidence, that emotional restraint, it captivates someone who's used to people trying too hard. An avoidant is often waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're used to people flooding them with attention, then demanding something in return. But when you validate them unexpectedly with no strings attached, you surprise them. You show them that emotional connection doesn't always have to come with pressure, that affection doesn't have to mean enmeshment. And that realization softens their defenses more than any amount of constant reassurance ever could. It's also important to understand that unpredictable validation teaches people how to value your attention. When you don't validate everything, they start noticing what you do respond to. They may lean into those traits more. They may start initiating moments of connection just to feel your approval again, not because you're manipulating them, but because your attention has become meaningful. It's not cheap. It's not automatic. It's earned. And in relationships, especially with someone who's afraid of being overwhelmed, earned attention builds desire in a way constant validation never could. They want more of it. They start tuning in to your cues. They begin to associate you not with pressure, but with significance. You've created a feedback loop that doesn't suffocate. It stimulates. There's also an element of power here. Not power over them, but power within yourself. When you stop handing out validation like candy, you take back emotional control. You start valuing your own energy more. You become selective, discerning. You watch how someone shows up and you respond based on what feels right, not what feels desperate. That's emotional maturity, that's self-respect. And when you combine that maturity with warmth, something rare happens. The avoidant person begins to feel safe. Not because you're always there, but because you're stable in your absence. You're not begging, not chasing, not validating out of fear. You're grounded. And your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's confidence. That confidence becomes something they crave, even if they don't know why. Unpredictable validation isn't about being aloof or withholding affection to gain power. It's about using timing and authenticity to make your words count. It's knowing that people don't value what's always easy, and it's trusting that your presence, when offered thoughtfully, is more impactful than any amount of overgiving. You don't need to constantly prove your worth. You don't need to fight for attention. You just need to understand how attention works, how emotion lands. And when you master the art of showing up in unexpected, meaningful ways, you stop being someone they tolerate and start being someone they can't stop thinking about. One of the most common mistakes people make in relationships with avoidant individuals is trying to speed things up emotionally. When feelings intensify, the natural impulse, especially for someone who is emotionally available or anxious, is to express more, give more, and move closer. You feel something, so you say it. You want connection, so you reach for it. And while that openness may seem healthy, it can feel overwhelming to someone who processes intimacy differently. The key to shifting this dynamic is learning to mirror their emotional pace, not to suppress your own feelings, but to attune to the rhythm they feel safe in. Mirroring someone's pace doesn't mean faking indifference or pretending not to care. It means recognizing when the emotional tempo is mismatched and consciously aligning with their speed. If they're slow to open up, you don't rush in with declarations. If they take time between responses, you don't flood them with messages. You move in sync, not out of fear, but out of respect for the space they need to feel safe. There's a psychology to this. When two people are emotionally out of rhythm, there's dissonance. One is pushing, the other is resisting. One is reaching, the other is retreating. But when you match someone's emotional pace, it sends a subconscious message: I'm safe. I'm not here to overwhelm you. I can handle distance without falling apart. That message builds trust. It makes them feel more in control and, paradoxically, more willing to lean in over time. Think of it like a dance. If your partner is doing a slow waltz and you're trying to salsa, you're stepping on toes. But if you listen, observe, and move at the same tempo, the experience becomes fluid. You create harmony, not chaos. And in emotionally sensitive dynamics, harmony is what allows intimacy to grow. Now, mirroring isn't about being passive or emotionally unavailable yourself. It's about restraint. It's about becoming attuned to subtle cues, how often they initiate contact, how they express feelings, how quickly they move from casual to vulnerable, and adjusting your behavior accordingly. If they're sharing a little, you share a little. If they're silent, you respect that silence. You don't punish or panic. You stay grounded and consistent. That groundedness is what makes you different. It creates emotional safety because it shows you're not reactive, you're responsive. What many people don't realize is that when you stop trying to accelerate intimacy, it actually deepens faster. Why? Because the avoidant no longer feels like they're being cornered or rushed. They can take a breath. They can explore the relationship at a pace that doesn't activate their defenses. And when defenses are down, genuine connection can emerge. Mirroring also allows you to stay present and emotionally balanced. If you're constantly pushing the relationship forward, you're likely operating from anxiety, not clarity. By matching their pace, you give yourself room to observe the dynamic more objectively. Are they really showing up? Are they capable of connection over time? Are you actually compatible or just trying to force chemistry? Slowing down helps you see the relationship for what it is, not just what you hope it could be. And sometimes, when you mirror someone's emotional pace, you realize they're not moving at all. That's valuable information. It allows you to make decisions based on reality instead of fantasy. But if they are slowly progressing, opening up, reaching out, initiating small forms of vulnerability, your presence, matched in tone and tempo, becomes the safe harbor they didn't know they needed. It's also worth noting that mirroring emotional pace doesn't mean never expressing your needs. It means choosing when and how you express them. You don't flood them with emotional demands in early stages. You don't over-explain your feelings when they haven't even processed their own. You wait until there's some mutual rhythm, some foundation of trust. Then when you do speak up, it lands more effectively. They're less likely to shut down because it's coming from someone who hasn't overwhelmed them in the past. In time, something subtle begins to shift. Because you've given them space and mirrored their pace, they begin to feel safer in the connection. That safety translates to more openness, more affection, and even vulnerability. It may come slowly, inconsistently, but it will come because their nervous system isn't bracing for impact. They're not expecting a flood of emotion or pressure. You've shown them that connection doesn't have to mean losing control. It can mean mutual respect, steady pacing, and freedom to breathe. And that's the key. Avoidants don't fall for the loudest love. They fall for the calmest presence. Someone who doesn't chase, doesn't push, doesn't demand. Someone who moves beside them, not behind, not ahead. Mirroring their emotional pace tells them without words, I see you. I'm not here to invade your space. I'm here to walk with you if and when you're ready. It's not easy. It requires patience, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. But when you learn to mirror rather than chase, respond rather than react, and move with instead of ahead of someone, You don't just attract connection, you earn trust. And in avoidant dynamics, trust is everything. So here's the truth. You don't need to chase, convince, or contort yourself to keep someone's interest, especially not someone with an avoidant attachment style. When you understand how their mind works, you stop reacting and start responding. You become intentional. Strategic distance gives them the space they need to feel safe. Unpredictable validation makes your presence felt, not just seen. And mirroring their emotional pace shows them you're not a threat. You're steady, grounded, and worth trusting. You're not here to win someone over by force. You're here to become so aligned with your own emotional strength that they feel your value without you having to shout it. When you stop giving everything away so easily, people start to lean in, especially the ones who are used to running. Leave them wondering, leave them thinking, leave them missing the calm, confident energy you bring. Because when you operate from clarity, not neediness, you shift the entire dynamic. And that's when an avoidant stops avoiding and starts pursuing.